My uncle sent me a video by mistake. In it, my mom called me a cash cow. She said I was useful for once. She called me the walking wallet, and not really family, just funding. She said all this from the house I'd quietly kept from foreclosure for 4 years. The video wasn't meant for me, but once I saw it, I didn't send the next payment. I sent something else. My name is Sabrina Porter. I am 30 years old. I live alone in a small, clean rental apartment in Riverton, in a building with beige walls and sensible gray carpeting. I am a senior inventory compliance analyst for Pike and Alder Freight Systems. My job is not exciting. It is not a job that people understand at parties. My job is to find the discrepancies. I look at spreadsheets that span thousands of lines, and I find the one number that does not match. I track a shipment of medical supplies that left a warehouse in Ohio but never arrived in Texas. I find the single point of failure in a logistic chain that costs the company millions. I am not rich, but I am precise. I am paid to calculate, to optimize, to cut losses, and to keep everything from collapsing. That is also how I live my life. My father died when I was in elementary school. He was a good man who smelled like sawdust and metal. He died in a construction accident that involved faulty scaffolding. After that, it was just my mother, my older sister Rachel, and me. Rachel is 4 years older than I am. My mother was a nurse for many years, working night shifts at the county hospital. She built an entire identity around this sacrifice. Every meal she cooked, every bill she paid, every holiday she worked was part of a narrative she crafted with expertise. The narrative was simple. I have sacrificed everything, and so you owe me everything. She retired early, citing poor health, a bad back from lifting patients, and an exhaustion that seemed to seep into her bones. Her pension, she said, was not nearly enough to live on, and the house, the one I grew up in, still had a mortgage. 4 years ago, she called me. She was not just crying. She was performing a complete emotional collapse over the phone. She told me the bank was going to seize the house. "They're going to take it. Sabrina," she sobbed, her voice cracking perfectly. "They're going to take the house where your father's ashes are still on the mantel in the living room." She did not just place a financial burden on me. She placed an emotional one. She had chained my father's memory to the property deed. I agreed to help immediately. There was no hesitation. The number was $2,000, every single month, for 4 straight years. I have not been late once. I cut everything from my life that was not essential. I stopped going out with colleagues. I stopped eating out entirely, my lunches becoming a rotation of bland, cost-effective Tupperware meals. I stopped getting my hair dyed. The gray roots that started appearing at my temples just stayed there. When my dishwasher broke, I learned how to fix it myself by watching YouTube videos, spending a frustrating Saturday with my hands covered in grease and foul-smelling water just to avoid calling a repairman. The money was an automated payment. It left my account and went directly into my mother's on the 5th of every month, regular as payroll. During those 4 years, Rachel, who lived only 20 minutes away from Mom, seemed to vanish unless she needed something. She would borrow the car. She would drop off her kids for emergency babysitting so she could attend a party. She used our mother's fatigue as a moral coat rack, hanging all her responsibilities on it. "Mom is just so tired," she would sigh, before asking for another favor. And yet, she was always praised. She was the devoted daughter, the one who stayed close to home. I was the one who had moved to the city. I was the one who was too busy. I believed I was a good person. I believed my mother genuinely needed the help. I believed this was family love. This is what you do. You see a part of your family sinking, and you plug the hole. You don't ask if they drilled the hole themselves. You just start bailing water. I let myself feel noble, even, it felt, in a strange way, correct. Then, on a Thursday night at 8:17, my phone buzzed with a video message. It was from my Uncle Alan, my mother's brother. It appeared in a group chat, but it was not the group chat I was used to. This one had a different name, a collection of relatives I recognized. but I knew instantly that I was not meant to be included. He had sent it to me by mistake. The video was shaky, filmed from a phone at a long, crowded dinner table. It was in a house I did not recognize, and I had not been invited. My mother was sitting at the head of the table, a glass of red wine in her hand. Rachel was beside her, laughing. They were eating prime rib. It was a massive, perfectly cooked piece of meat, the kind I had not seen served at any frugal family dinner I had attended in years. In the video, I could hear my Uncle Alan's voice, joking from behind the camera. "Sabrina is really carrying the house, huh? $2,000 a month, 4 years? That girl must really love the place." My mother laughed. It was not a laugh of gratitude. It was a sneer, a short, dismissive curl of her lip. She took a sip of wine. Then she said, "Love is a polite word for it. She's just paying off her life's outstanding debt. She has no husband, no kids, no other value. At least she can be the cash cow for the family." The whole table laughed. Rachel's voice chimed in, loud and sharp. "Sabrina always needs a thank you for doing the bare minimum. She lives alone. The salary isn't bad. She just acts like she's the savior." An aunt I barely knew leaned forward, her voice dripping with fake pity. "The girl should be grateful she's finally useful. Otherwise, she's just another mouth to feed." I heard the sound of glasses clinking, and then my mother's voice, landing the final sentence like a knife pressed flat against the skin. "She owes me. Her existence is because of me. It's normal for her to pay it back. Don't act like she's a hero. She's just my fixed income, okay?" I sat motionless on my sofa. The video looped, playing again and again. My phone grew hot in my hand. The first feeling was not anger. It was blankness, a sterile, white emptiness that filled my chest and pushed all the air out. My heart, when it finally started beating again, sounded like the distant thrum of an air conditioning unit. Before my Uncle Alan could realize his mistake and delete the message, I saved the video. I transferred the file to my laptop. My professional training took over. I created 3 separate copies, saved on 3 different drives, as if I were processing internal evidence for a corporate fraud case. The shaking in my hands lasted for maybe an hour. It was a deep tremor, starting in the shoulders and working its way down to my fingers, making it impossible to hold the phone steady. But the blankness, that cold, sterile white void, remained. It was a familiar feeling. It was the feeling of crisis management. It was the feeling I got at Pike and Alder right before I had to dive into a catastrophic shipping error. The moment before the panic solidifies into focus. When my hands finally stopped shaking, I did not cry. I did not throw the phone. I did not call my mother and scream. I set the phone down, walked to my desk, and opened my laptop. I began to do the only thing I know how to do. I began to reconcile the accounts. My professional life is a series of verifications. You do not act on rumor. You do not act on emotion. You act on verifiable data. The video was the rumor. Now, I needed the data. I opened my online banking portal. The interface was as familiar to me as my own reflection. I went to the transfer history. I set the custom date range, 4 years back. I typed my mother's account number into the filter. The screen populated instantly, a clean column of transactions. The 5th of every month, $2,000. The 5th of the next month, $2,000. 48 entries. 48 months of my life, summarized in a single, repeating number. I did the math in my head. $96,000, a down payment on a house of my own, a master's degree, a life I had not lived. I created a new folder on my secure drive. I named it Mortgage Evidence. It was no longer family support. It was not helping mom. It was evidence. Methodically, I clicked on each month's bank statement. I saved each one as a PDF. I named them precisely. 01, Jan year. 02, Feb year. 03, Mar year. I worked backward, stacking the files neatly in the directory. It was no longer money I had given out of love. It was a record of payments rendered. When the bank statements were secured, I opened my email archive. I searched for my mother's name. I searched for keywords. Got it. Did you get it? Sent. The results loaded. 4 years of short, cold exchanges. My emails were always slightly nervous, slightly hopeful. Hey, Mom. Just letting you know the transfer went through. Love you. Hi, Mom. Should be in your account now. Let me know. Her replies were sterile, transactional. Yes, got it. Fine. On time. Good. Received. Reading them now. I saw them for what they were. They were not replies from a mother to a daughter. They were receipts from a landlord to a tenant. They were acknowledgments from a boss to a temporary employee. I took screenshots of every single exchange. I cropped them. I numbered them. I saved them to the mortgage evidence folder. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C. The audit was not complete. I had my record of payment. I did not have the record of debt. I picked up my phone. My hands were perfectly still. I looked up the number for the mortgage company that held the loan on my mother's house. I had the number memorized. 2 years ago, during a particularly dire phone call. My mother had cried that the bank needed more security and would not talk to her. She had asked me to co-sign a secondary guarantor form, just so they have another name on file, Sabrina, in case something happens to me. I had signed it instantly. I thought I was protecting her. I dialed. I navigated the automated menu. I entered the loan number. A polite woman named Brenda answered. How can I help you today? Hello, Brenda, I said, my voice perfectly level, the same voice I used for corporate negotiations. My name is Sabrina Porter. I am listed as a secondary guarantor on loan number 774A9. I need to get a full status update on the account, including the remaining principal balance and the current payment status. One moment, Ms. Porter. I heard the sound of typing, the soft click of keys. Yes, I see you here. Authorized for information access. Okay, let's see. She recited the numbers, and as she spoke, the cold, white blankness in my chest began to feel like ice. I almost laughed. It was a sharp, painful urge, a hysteria that I swallowed down. The numbers were wrong. The remaining balance on the mortgage was significantly lower than my mother had claimed. The desperate scenarios she had painted for me, the constant threat of foreclosure, the bank ready to seize the house any day now, were fictions. The house was not on the brink. According to Brenda, the account was in excellent standing. In fact, Brenda said casually, it looks like the account is actually paid ahead by several months. The payments have been very consistent. I kept my voice calm. Brenda, can you tell me what the required minimum monthly payment is for the mortgage, including taxes and insurance? She told me the number was not $2,000. It was closer to $1,200. I felt the blood drain from my face. For 4 years, I had been sending $2,000, believing it was the bare minimum to stop the wolves at the door. But only $1,200 of that was for the door. The other $800? That was the surplus. That was the prime rib. That was the red wine. That was the fixed income. I asked one more question. When is the next payment officially due? The next payment isn't required until the 1st of next month, she said. The grace period extends to the 15th. We would not send a first warning letter until after that. The payment was due in 12 days. If that payment was not sent, it would trigger a formal delinquency notice, a letter, a warning, not a seizure, not an eviction. I realized something larger. For many months, there was no stressful near-foreclosure event because the account was already paid ahead. Sometimes I sent $2,000, but only $1,200 went to the bank. The rest did not vanish. It just did not go into the house. It went into my mother's pocket. I thanked Brenda and hung up the phone. I opened a new Excel spreadsheet. My fingers flew across the keys. This was my territory. Column A, month. Column B, amount paid. Sabrina. I typed 2,000 and dragged the cell down 48 times. Column C, actual mortgage due. I typed 1,200 and dragged it down. Column D, surplus. I entered the formula, EOS B2C2. The result, 800. I dragged the formula down. 48 entries. At the bottom of column D, I hit the sum button. The number that appeared on my screen was $38,400. I was not just paying the mortgage, I was providing a salary. I was funding a lifestyle I could not afford for myself. I stared at the number. I leaned back in my chair. The phrase from the video replayed, but now it had data to back it up. She's just my fixed income, not my daughter. Fixed income, I was an asset. I was a line item on her personal budget. I slept for 2 hours that night. I just lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind playing one sentence over and over. She has no husband, no kids, no other value. The next morning, I sat in my kitchen with my laptop and a cup of black coffee that had gone cold. I opened a new Word document. I began to write. It was a long document. I structured it like a compliance report. Part 1. Summary of payments. I stated the total. $96,000 paid over 48 consecutive months. I attached the spreadsheet. Part 2. Verbatim transcripts. I transcribed every word from the video. Cash cow. Walking wallet. No other value. Fixed income. Part 3. List of attendees and endorsers. I listed every person at that table who had laughed or added their own insult. Rachel, Uncle Alan, my aunt. Part 4. Timeline of misrepresentation. I detailed the imminent foreclosure narrative my mother had used. Contrasted with the factual statement from the mortgage company, I highlighted the $38,000 surplus. I added a single sentence at the very beginning of the document, an executive summary. If you think I only know how to be quiet and pay, you do not know what I do for a living. I exported the document as a PDF. I titled the file, To Whom It May Concern. I knew exactly where that file was going to go. Finally, I did the one thing I had never done in 4 years. I logged back into my online banking. I went to the scheduled payments. I found the automated transfer to my mother, set for the 5th. I clicked on it. I hit skip. I decided I would not be sending the money, and I would not be warning her that it was not coming. The 5th of the month. I had been awake since 4 a.m. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the same table where I had compiled my report. The To Whom It May Concern PDF was minimized on my laptop screen. My phone was on the table, face up. I was on my second cup of coffee. I watched the clock on the microwave. I knew my mother's routine. She checked her bank account first thing in the morning on the 5th. It was a ritual. For 4 years. My $2,000 was the first transaction she saw. 8:30 a.m. passed. Nothing. 9 a.m. Nothing. The clock ticked over to 9:12 a.m. My phone rang. The caller ID was Mom. I let it ring 3 times. This was a small, petty act, but it was mine. On the 4th ring, I picked up. I did not say hello. There was no greeting on her end. No, hi, Sabrina. No, how are you, honey? Just the voice of a manager whose direct deposit is late. Sabrina, where is this month's money? I had rehearsed this line. I had said it to my reflection. I had whispered it in the shower. I had typed it out. It's not coming. The silence on the other end of the line was not the silence of a person who has been wounded. It was the sharp, metallic silence of a machine that has jammed. I could hear it. The processing. This was a discrepancy in her accounts. I heard a rustle of papers. I heard a sharp, frustrated inhale, the kind of sound someone makes when they realize they've misplaced their keys. It was pure financial panic. Then, the machine rebooted. The voice that returned was not the voice of the manager. It was the voice of the martyr. It was the soft, fragile, trembling voice she used when she needed something. It was the voice that had worked on me for 30 years. Oh, honey, what's wrong? The sweetness was thick, like honey. Is everything okay? Please tell me you did not lose your job. Sabrina, you know you can tell me. You cannot do this to me right now. Baby, you know the bank. You know they're just waiting. They are watching this house like hawks. Your father's house. Do you want them to take your father's house from me? This was it. The script. The performance I had paid $96,000 to watch. I kept my own voice perfectly flat, the voice of compliance. I saw the video from last night. The machine jammed again. The silence was absolute, colder. What video? Her voice was a wisp. The one from the dinner party, I said. The one Uncle Alan sent me by mistake. The one where you were all eating prime rib. Sabrina. I did not let her start. I began to recite my transcript. I heard you call me the cash cow. I heard you say I have no other value. I heard you say I am not really family, just funding. I heard you say I am just your fixed income. I said the words calmly, one after another, like items on an inventory list. The reaction was instantaneous. The fragile martyr vanished, and the rage came roaring to the surface. It was like a mask falling off. My God! Sabrina! It was a joke. It was just a family joke. We were teasing. You have always been this way. You are too sensitive. You always have to be the victim. You are going to destroy this family. You are going to tear us all apart because you cannot take a simple joke? I took a slow breath. I looked at the PDF on my screen. A joke, I repeated, not as a question, but as an analysis. So it is a joke to call me your fixed income? It is a joke to say I am not really family, just the wallet? It is a joke to purposefully exclude me from a dinner and then sit around that table with your wine and steak to discuss whether or not I am still useful? You are ungrateful, she shrieked, and the sound was so familiar it did not even make me flinch. After everything I did for you, I raised you by myself. I sacrificed everything. Do you know how many nights I stayed up worrying about you? How many nights I worked until my feet bled? I did not remind her that on most of those nights, Rachel was the one who watched me. Rachel was the one who made me cereal for dinner and put me to bed while our mother worked her shifts. I did not remind her that her sacrifice had been weaponized and monetized for my entire adult life. I did not remind her that I had paid for that sacrifice, with interest. I just let her talk. I let the tantrum run its course, like a storm blowing itself out. When she finally paused to take a ragged breath, I spoke into the silence. My voice was quiet, but it cut through everything. This is not about the money anymore, I said. This is about respect, and you do not have any left. I pressed the red end call button on the screen. I looked at my hand. It was perfectly steady. I was not angry. I was not sad. I was not triumphant. I felt a terrifying, deep, and profound calm. The programmed guilt, the automatic trigger that should have made me crumble and call her back to apologize, was gone. The wire had been cut. My phone stayed silent for exactly 11 minutes. I counted them. It was just enough time for her to call Rachel. At 9:33 a.m., my phone lit up with a barrage of text messages. The family group chat, the one I was allowed to be in, exploded. The first was from Rachel. It was a solid block of text, sent in a panic. Sabrina, what the hell are you doing? Mom is a complete wreck. She is hysterical. Send the money. Just send the money. She is struggling. Why would you pick the absolute worst time to do this to her? Not a single word about the video. Not one question about what she, herself, had said. No apology. Just a command. Fix this. Put the mask back on. Get back in your box. The next text was from my aunt, the one from the video. Sabrina, dear, whatever is happening, you need to keep this internal. Family business stays in the family. You are overreacting, and you are going to embarrass your mother in front of the neighbors. This is not how we handle things. Embarrassment. Not the truth, not the betrayal, the appearance. That was the real crime. And then, there was the loudest response of all. The silence. Nothing from Uncle Alan. He was the one who had sent the video. He was the one who had lit the fuse. And now, he was in a bunker, waiting for the smoke to clear. His silence was the most dangerous, the most cowardly. It was the silence of a man who had seen the truth and had chosen to hide. I looked at the texts. I looked at the silent phone. They were all following their scripts, playing the roles they had always played. The enforcer, the peacemaker, the coward, and I, the fixed income, had just defaulted. I turned back to my laptop. I had done my audit. I had confirmed the discrepancy. Now, it was time to publish the report. I opened my email. I started a new message. I attached the file. To whom it may concern, PDF. I thought about the recipients. This was not a rage-fueled blast to the entire world. This was a targeted strike. This was compliance. I was simply correcting the record. I added the first email address. The head of the women's auxiliary at my mother's church. This was the group of women my mother met with every Sunday. The ones she baked for. The ones she told, with tears in her eyes, about her ungrateful absent daughter in the city, who never helped. This was the source of her martyrdom. I added the second group, the neighborhood watch email list, the group of trusted, gossiping neighbors my mother had cultivated for 2 decades, the audience for her front porch performances of The Struggling Widow. I added the last 3 email addresses, 3 specific relatives, the 3 who always called me cold and career-obsessed, the ones who would text me, "Your mother is so lonely. Why don't you ever come by?" The ones who believed I should be fixing her light bulbs and mowing her lawn for free every weekend, just as Rachel was praised for not doing. I typed a single sentence in the body of the email. For your information, the attached document corrects a long-standing clerical error. My finger hovered over the send button. This was the real foreclosure. Not the house. The narrative. I was foreclosing on the story she had told for 30 years. The story that I was the debtor and she was the long-suffering saint. I clicked send. The fallout did not wait. I had expected a slow burn. Days of awkward silence before the whispers started. I was wrong. The consequences of my email arrived faster and from a direction I had never anticipated. I was at my desk, trying to focus on a logistics report about a missing shipment of refrigeration units, when my personal phone rang. It was just after noon. The number was local, but not one I recognized. I let it go to voicemail. I was in compliance mode, and I did not have time for an unknown variable. A moment later, the phone buzzed. A new voicemail. The message was from a woman with a firm, clear, no-nonsense voice. "Ms. Porter, my name is Marlene Coates. I am the treasurer for the Emergency Relief Fund at the Riverton Community Church. I just received a very disturbing email from you. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. This is important." A cold spike of adrenaline shot through me. The Emergency Relief Fund. This was not just the women's auxiliary. This was the money. I took my phone and walked to a small, private conference room used for HR calls. I shut the door. I dialed the number. She answered on the first ring. Marlene Coates. "Ms. Coates, this is Sabrina Porter. I am returning your call." "Thank you for calling back so quickly. Ms. Porter," she said. There was no polite Southern preamble. This was business. "I am looking at the document you sent, the PDF. I need to verify what I'm reading. Is it factually correct that you have been paying $2,000 every month for the past 4 years toward your mother's mortgage?" "Yes," I said. "That is correct. I have the bank statements for all 48 payments." There was a long, heavy sigh on the other end of the line. It was a sound of profound exhaustion, the sound of someone who has just had their worst suspicions confirmed. "Ms. Porter," she began, and her voice was heavy. "Your mother, Mrs. Porter, has been receiving funds from our emergency relief program for the past 3 years." I felt the blood in my veins turn to ice. I said nothing. I just listened. "She came to us," Marlene continued, "in absolute distress. She told the council that she had been abandoned. She said both her daughters, you and your sister, had left her to fend for herself. She told us she was months behind on the mortgage and was facing imminent foreclosure. She said she had no one. She cried in the meetings. Ms. Porter." I stared at the beige wall of the conference room. My heart was not pounding. It was slow, a heavy, dull thud in my ears. "How much?" I asked. My voice was a whisper. "It was not a small amount," Marlene said, her voice tightening with a controlled anger. "It was several $1,000s a year. This fund is not for extras. It is a needs-based fund, vetted by the council. We allocate that money for elderly members of the congregation who cannot pay their heating bills in the winter. We use it for life-saving prescriptions. We use it to keep the lights on for people who are truly, desperately alone. She paused, and I heard her take a sharp breath. We did not use it for prime rib dinners. I closed my eyes. The video, the wine, the laughter. My $96,000 was the fixed income. The church's emergency fund was the discretionary budget. My mother had not just been lying to me, she had been lying to everyone. She had monetized her victimhood on a community-wide scale. We have to open a formal investigation, Marlene said, her voice all business now. The council is holding an emergency meeting tonight. I am going to present your document and the transcripts. I need you to know, Ms. Porter, this is very serious. This could become a criminal matter. She submitted applications, year after year, with false information to obtain those relief funds. That is fraud. I thought of my mother, crying on the phone about my father's ashes. I thought of her sneering face in the video. I looked back on my life, at every time she had told me she was destitute, every time she had called me selfish for buying a new pair of work shoes. It was not a plea for help. It was a strategy. It was a well-executed, long-term business plan. And I had been her most reliable investor, while the church had been her venture capital. Thank you for informing me, Ms. Coates, I said, my voice as steady as if I were closing a file. Please let me know if you need my bank statements. I am happy to provide them. I hung up. As I walked back to my desk, my phone began to light up. The PDF was making its rounds. The narrative my mother had spent decades building was being publicly dismantled in a single afternoon. A text from a neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. Oh, Sabrina, I just read your email. All these years. Your mother always told us you were so selfish, that you were traveling the world and forgot about her. I admit, I believed her. I judged you. I need to apologize. I am so sorry. Dear, I was wrong. It was the first apology I had received, and it was from a stranger. A moment later, another text, this one from my aunt, the one from the video. Sabrina, you are shaming this family. This is a private matter. What happens in this house stays in this house. Are you trying to drag the police into your mother's life? You are destroying everything. You need to stop this right now. I stared at the two messages, one from a neighbor, apologizing for being deceived, one from my family, attacking me for exposing the deception. It was fascinating. Not one person from the dinner table had texted to say, I am sorry. Not one had said, my God, your mother was wrong. Their only concern was that I had broken the code of silence. I had published the internal audit. And then, the real storm hit. Rachel. My phone began to buzz. A call from Rachel. I declined it. It rang again. Instantly. I declined it. A new voicemail notification appeared. The phone rang again. Declined. Another voicemail. Ring. Decline. Voicemail. Ring. Decline. Voicemail. This continued for the entire afternoon. It was a digital assault. By the time I left my office at 5 p.m., I had 9 new voicemails, all from Rachel. I sat in my car in the parking garage, the engine off, the silence ringing in my ears. I opened my phone. I created a new folder in my mortgage evidence drive. I titled it, Evidence Addendum Rachel. I played the first voicemail. It was pure rage. Sabrina, call me, now. You have no idea what you just did. You have started a war, you stupid. It cut off in a string of curses. I saved the file. I played the second one. The rage was still there, but now it was underpinned by a new note. Panic. Mom is a complete wreck. She is hysterical. The church called her. The church. Sabrina, Marlene Coates, you sent that thing to the church? What is wrong with you? Fix this. You call them back and you tell them you were lying. I saved the file. The third, fourth, and fifth voicemails were a blur of screaming and threats. "You'll regret this. You're dead to me. You are destroying this family." But the sixth voicemail, the tone changed. The rage was gone, replaced by a high, thin, reedy sound. It was the sound of true fear. "Sabrina, please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, just call me. This is bad. This is not like before. They are talking about fraud. They are talking about a formal, like a legal investigation. Fraud. Sabrina, criminal fraud." I saved the file. The seventh voicemail was barely coherent, just sobbing. The eighth was the one that mattered. The mask was completely gone. This was not the enforcer. This was a terrified co-conspirator. "Sabrina, please," she begged, and I could hear her pacing. "If they press charges, if this becomes a court case, Mom could go to jail. Do you understand me? Jail. Is that what you want? Is this worth it? You're going to send your own mother to prison over a stupid joke at dinner? Just to prove you're right? Oh my God. Sabrina, please, call them. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I'll pay you back. I'll get the money. Just stop this." I saved the file, the offer to pay me back. Another critical piece of data. The ninth voicemail was just 2 words, hissed through sobs. "I hope you're happy." I finished saving the last file. I did not text her back. I did not call her back. I forwarded all 9 audio files to my personal email. I sat in the quiet, concrete garage. The game had changed. This was no longer a family dispute. The word criminal had been spoken. The word jail had been used. My report had not just exposed a lie. It had exposed a potential crime. I did one more thing. I did not look for a family counselor or a mediator. I opened my work contacts. The legal department at Pike and Alder sometimes used outside counsel for sensitive partner disputes or internal executive conflicts. There was one lawyer they always recommended, a woman known for being an absolute shark, surgically precise and emotionally detached. Her name was Meredith Cole. I found her office number. I called. Her assistant put me through. "Meredith Cole." Her voice was like polished steel. "Ms. Cole," I said. "My name is Sabrina Porter. I am an analyst at Pike and Alder. I have a private civil matter that is rapidly escalating. It involves significant financial misrepresentation, potential wire and charity fraud, and now, harassment. I need to know what my liability is, and what I should do next." There was a pause. "Send me everything you have," Meredith said. "The video, the PDF you created, the audio files from your sister. Send it all to my private email. I will review it tonight." I forwarded the entire evidence package to her. She called me back an hour later. "Sabrina," she said, and her voice was impressed. "This is not a family dispute. This is a comprehensive fraud portfolio. You've done 90% of my job for me. Now, listen to me very carefully. I understand the emotional component here, but I want you to put it in a box. From this moment on, you do not speak to them. You do not answer their calls. You do not respond to their texts. All communication goes through me. Your sister's voicemails are not just harassment. They are an attempt to coerce a witness. They are scared, and they should be." She took a breath. "If any one of them, especially your sister, shows up at your apartment or, God forbid, your place of work, you do not engage. You call security, you call the police, and then you call me, in that order." I felt the last bit of familial obligation drain out of me, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. "I understand," I said. "Good," Meredith replied. "They started a family game. You just turned it into a legal one. And from where I'm sitting, you are the only one with any evidence." I hung up the phone. I started my car. For the first time in my life, I felt something that resembled control. The weekend was a void. I followed Meredith's instructions. I blocked my mother's number. I blocked Rachel's. I muted the family group chat. I existed in a cone of absolute, ringing silence. I went to the grocery store. I did my laundry. I balanced my checkbook. And for the first time in 4 years, the $2,000 deficit was not there. The feeling was not relief, it was vertigo. On Monday morning, I went to work. I wore my most severe outfit, a charcoal gray suit, my hair pulled back so tightly it hurt. I was on time. I was a senior analyst at Pike and Alder Freight Systems. I was a professional. This was my territory. My world was spreadsheets, compliance, and verifiable data. Their world was shouting, guilt, and emotional extortion. I intended to stay in mine. I was in the middle of a departmental review, outlining new compliance protocols for cross-state shipping. When my desk phone chimed, it was not an outside line. It was the internal extension for the front lobby. I picked it up. Sabrina Porter. The voice was Dave, the head of building security, a man I usually only shared a polite nod with. His voice was tight, urgent. Sabrina, you need to come down to the lobby. There is a woman here. She is demanding to see you. She is very agitated. My blood ran cold. Is her name Rachel Porter? Yes, he said, a note of strained relief in his voice. She is causing a significant disruption. We need you to come down. I walked out of the meeting. I did not run. I walked to the elevator. I pressed the lobby button. My heart was not racing. It was hammering, a slow, heavy beat against my ribs, like a fist on a door. I was not the terrified little sister. I was an employee of this company, and my family had brought their chaos to my door. The elevators opened onto the main atrium. Pike and Alder's lobby was designed to impress clients. It was 3 stories of black marble and smoked glass. The only sound was usually the quiet trickle of a large, minimalist water feature and the respectful click of heels on the stone. Today, that sound was replaced by shouting. Rachel was standing in the center of the lobby, right next to the water feature. Her face was blotchy and crimson. Her hair was a mess. Her hands were visibly shaking. 2 security guards, including Dave, were standing about 5 feet away from her, their hands half raised, unsure how to handle a domestic dispute in a corporate fortress. Several executives who had been walking through the atrium had stopped, watching. The receptionist looked horrified. Rachel saw me step off the elevator. She pointed a trembling finger at me. Her voice was a raw shriek that echoed off the marble. There you are. You cannot do this to Mom. You are killing her. Do you hear me? They are investigating her because of you. You sent that email. You are sick. You are a sick, twisted. I did not stop walking toward her. I stopped about 10 feet away, just out of her reach. I kept my voice low, cold, and professional. The voice of compliance. Rachel, you need to leave the building. You are trespassing. Leave right now. That word, trespassing, seemed to break something inside her. It was the realization that her sister card had no currency here. This was not the family home, where she could scream and throw things. This was my domain. Trespassing? She screamed, and the sound was almost a laugh. You're pathetic. You love this, do you not? You love playing the poor, pitiful victim. You want everyone here. And she gestured wildly to the executives. To think you are some kind of savior? She took a step toward me. Dave, the security guard, put his hand on her arm. Ma'am. She ripped her arm away and spat the next words directly at my face. They are going to find out the truth. You know what the truth is? You are just paying because you are in debt. You owe Mom. You have always owed her. You owe her because she did not leave you at the hospital when you were born. The entire lobby went silent. The trickling of the water feature suddenly sounded like a roar. The executives were frozen. The receptionists' mouths were open. People hear a lot of things in family fights. They hear, I hate you. They hear, you ruined my life. They do not hear, she did not leave you at the hospital. It was a line so specific, so deeply cruel, that it sucked all the air out of the atrium. It was not a joke. It was not teasing. It was a confession. And in their shocked faces, I saw the instant, horrifying validation of my entire case. They believed me. Dave and the other guard did not hesitate this time. They each took one of her arms. "Ma'am," Dave said, and his voice was hard now. "You are leaving the premises, now." The reality of being physically removed by security hit her. She began to struggle, to twist in their grip. The rage was replaced by a final, desperate, reptilian spite. "You are a snake!" she shrieked, her feet dragging on the marble as they pulled her toward the revolving glass doors. "You are a snake! You betrayed your own family! You will rot alone!" They hauled her through the doors and out onto the concrete plaza. I stood there, motionless, in the center of the lobby. I could feel every eye on me. The COO of the company was standing by the elevator bank, his face a mask of disbelief. I did not cry. I did not explain. I simply turned, walked back to the elevator, and rode it up to my floor. I went straight to the internal legal department. I sat down at a guest terminal and wrote a formal incident report. I detailed the time, 10:03 a.m., the location, the main lobby, the witnesses, including the COO. I transcribed Rachel's threats, including the "killing her" line, and the "did not leave you at the hospital" line. I labeled it "workplace harassment and public threat by a non-employee." I attached the file to an email and sent it to Meredith Cole. I worked for the rest of the day. I completed my shipping report. I answered emails. I was a machine. I was an analyst. I was not a person. That evening, Meredith called. "I got the incident report," she said. Her voice was cold iron. "They are predictable. When the emotional blackmail failed, they escalated to public humiliation and coercion. This was an attempt to get you fired, or at least to scare you so badly you would pay them to stop." "What do we do?" I asked. "We are filing for an emergency temporary restraining order against Rachel Porter. Effective immediately, the incident report from your corporate security, plus the witness list including your COO, makes it an easy approval. She will not be allowed within 500 feet of you, your apartment, or your place of business. If she even calls you, she can be arrested." Meredith paused. "And if your mother decides to try a similar stunt, we add her to the order. Do you understand?" "Yes," I said. I hung up the phone. I sat in my quiet apartment. I thought I would cry. I thought I would finally break down. The weight of that lobby scene crushing me, but I did not. I just felt a chilling, profound clarity. They were not fighting to get their daughter or sister back. They were fighting to regain control of their asset. My sister had not come to my office to reconcile. She had come to terrorize a fixed income stream that had dared to default. They did not want me. They just wanted the money. The final act of the night came, as it so often did, from my mother. She had lost the battle of the phone. She had lost the battle of the email. She had lost the physical battle in my lobby. So she retreated to her last, most public fortress, social media. A notification popped up. My mother had made a public post and tagged me in it. The post was a picture of her, looking frail and sad, sitting at her kitchen table. The caption was a masterpiece of her craft. "My heart is broken," she wrote. "My youngest child, Sabrina Porter, is trying to push me out onto the street and is spreading vicious lies about me to destroy my good name. I raised that girl with my own bleeding hands. I sacrificed everything for her. And this is how she repays me. This is the thanks I get. Please pray for her, and for me." I watched the comments roll in. For the first 10 minutes, they were exactly what she wanted. "Oh, Janet, you poor thing. I am so sorry. Sending prayers. Stay strong. That girl should be ashamed. I cannot believe a daughter would do that to her own mother." And then, my PDF began to fight back. A comment appeared from Mrs. Henderson, the neighbor. "Janet, that is not what I heard. I heard Sabrina was paying your mortgage for 4 years. Another, from someone in the church group. "Wait, Janet, did you not tell the Relief Council you were abandoned? How could you be abandoned if she was paying $2,000 a month?" And then, a relative I had sent the file to chimed in, tagging me. She called Sabrina a cash cow at a dinner party, We heard the video. Janet, you are not telling the truth. A second relative. She's been taking money from the church's emergency fund while her daughter paid all the bills. This is not bleeding hands. This is fraud. I watched, in real time, as her public narrative collapsed. The comments turned from sympathy to confusion, and then to anger. The people she had lied to were confronting her, using my data, in the very forum she had tried to use to slander me. Her mask was not just slipping, it was being ripped off in front of her entire audience. The next day, Marlene Coates called me. "Sabrina," she said, her voice grim. "The council met, in light of the social media posts, your mother's complete lack of remorse, and the overwhelming evidence you provided. We have formally filed a financial fraud complaint at the county level. This is out of our hands now. It is with the district attorney's office." The game was over. For my entire life, my family had operated on emotional threats, on guilt, shame, and the fear of what people would think. But this was no longer an emotional threat. This was a case number. This was official paperwork. This was a government agency. My phone was quiet for 48 hours. The restraining order had been served. For the first time in my life, Rachel Porter could not scream in my face without consequence. The restraining order bought me silence. The weekend that followed was the first in my adult life that was not punctuated by a text message of passive-aggressive guilt, a demanding phone call, or the crushing, automated weight of the upcoming payment. The silence was vast. It was terrifying. And it was in this new, echoing quiet that the past finally rushed in to be audited. I thought back to my childhood. After my father died, the house did not become peaceful. It just became empty. The absence of his laughter, his heavy boots on the porch, his sawdust smell, left a vacuum. It was a vacuum my mother filled, quickly and completely, with her narrative of sacrifice, and in that new world, she assigned us our roles. Rachel was always the pretty one. She was the social one. The girl with a future, the one everyone loves. My mother would buy Rachel prom dresses we could not afford, marking the purchase down as an investment in her future. When Rachel turned 15, my mother bought her first real lipstick, a deep red, and taught her how to apply it. They would whisper in the kitchen like co-conspirators, like allies. Rachel was my mother's public-facing asset, her proof of success. I was the practical mind. I was not great with people, but good at work. I was the one who was told, "You do not need to be popular. Sabrina, you just need to be smart. You do not need anyone to love you, as long as you know how to make money and stay out of trouble." The roles were never clearer than in our high school achievements. When I earned a partial academic scholarship to college, my mother looked at the acceptance letter, nodded once, and said, "Good, at least I will not have to carry both of you." There was no party, there was no celebration. My success was viewed as a reduction of her burden. When Rachel, 2 years prior, had nearly failed to graduate high school due to missing assignments, my mother threw her a massive "We Made It" party. She celebrated Rachel's resilience and fighting spirit. She bought Rachel a 10-year-old used car, registered in my mother's name, as a reward for surviving. The rule was established without ever being spoken. Rachel was the emotional investment, the one who would bring pride, a good marriage, and social standing. I was the financial plan. I was the one who would be reliable. I was the one who would pay. And I did. I played my role perfectly. When she called me 4 years ago, her voice was a trembling, perfectly crafted instrument of panic. She talked about the bank, the letters, the threat of foreclosure. She cried about the shame of it, but the masterstroke, the line that secured the $96,000, was when she invoked my father. His ashes were on the mantel, in a simple wooden box next to his framed union card. "If this house disappears, Sabrina," she sobbed, her voice breaking just so, "your father disappears all over again. It is the last piece of him I have." That sentence killed me. It was emotional homicide. I did not ask. "Mom, how much is the mortgage?" I did not ask. How much do you have left to pay? I did not ask. Can we look at the numbers together? I just heard the sound of my father's memory being held hostage, and I heard my own deep, programmed guilt. I agreed immediately. I will cover it. Mom, do not worry. I will cover it. So I began to pare my life down. I stripped it back, piece by piece, until it was small enough to service the $2,000 drain she required every month. I declined birthday dinners with friends. I passed on the company-sponsored team-building trip to the coast, lying that I had a scheduling conflict. I had a long-held, quiet dream of taking a pottery class at the local art center. I had always wanted to do something with my hands that was not typing on a keyboard, to create something instead of just auditing it. I crossed it off the list. Anything that brought me personal joy, anything that cost money that was not for survival, was filed under inappropriate right now, Mom needs me. What I failed to understand for 30 years, what I could only see now in the cold silence of my apartment, was that my mother did not accidentally make me feel guilty. She cultivated it. She farmed it like a cash crop. My anxiety was her fertilizer. My sense of obligation was her irrigation. Every drop of my guilt, every pang of my desire for her approval, was a pipeline straight to her bank account. It was her greatest, most reliable asset. I used to believe that if I just paid enough, if I was just useful enough, if I was just quiet enough, one day she would look at me and finally say it. That's my daughter, and I am proud of her. I have been waiting to hear that sentence for nearly 30 years. It was not until I saw the video, until I heard her sneer the words, fixed income, that I finally understood. That sentence was never going to come. It was not in her script. It was not a line she was capable of delivering. Because in her eyes, I was not her daughter. I was not a person. I was a predictable, reliable, automated cash flow. That realization did not just hurt me. In the strangest, most painful way, it set me free. It was the feeling of discovering that the heavy iron shackles you have worn around your wrists, your entire life, were never actually locked. The key was never hers to hold. You could have slipped them off at any time, if only you had stopped apologizing for the noise they made. For the first time since my early 20s, I let myself think about my future, a future completely detached from their ecosystem. I saw the shape of a life that did not include Rachel screaming at me in a corporate lobby. I saw a bank account that did not have my mother's name listed as the primary. Mandatory outgoing debt. I saw a life where I could take a pottery class. I went to sleep that night, and for the first time in 4 years, I did not set the 5 a.m. alarm I usually set on the 4th of the month. It was an alarm I had labeled double-check transfer for Mom. That habit, that small digital leash, was broken. I cried for a long time, the silent, hot tears of an analyst who has found a fatal error spanning decades. But it was not for the loss of my family. I had never really had them. I was crying for the loss of my time. I was crying because I had finally, painfully, reclaimed a part of my life that I thought I had signed away forever. The next morning, I did something I have walked past every day for 4 years. I went into the artisan bakery on the corner near my apartment, the one with the blue door. I had always dismissed it as a luxury, an irresponsible expense. I bought a real latte, with steamed oat milk, not the cheap, bitter instant coffee I made at home. I bought an apple pastry that was still warm from the oven. I sat at a small table by the window, in the sunlight. I ate it slowly. I tasted the cinnamon and the butter. It felt like the first time in my adult life that I was eating food I had paid for with my own money, without having to mentally justify it, without asking permission from my mother's ghost. And as I was sitting there, feeling the first quiet, tentative rays of a new life, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Meredith Cole. The subject line was, Update, Porter v. Porter. The message was short. Sabrina, your mother has retained new counsel, a high-conflict attorney from downtown named Michael Evans. They are officially threatening a lawsuit. They are demanding a full public apology, a retraction of your statements to the church, and financial payment for severe emotional damages and public humiliation. Get ready. This fight is not just about the church anymore. The email from my mother's new lawyer was a masterpiece of manufactured outrage. It arrived forwarded from Meredith, with a single line from her. As expected. The document was titled, Formal Cease and Desist and Demand for Compensation. It was aggressive, loud, and full of legal jargon designed to intimidate. It accused me of a coordinated and malicious campaign of defamation against a vulnerable elderly widow. It cited my To Whom It May Concern PDF as an act of public character assassination. It referenced my mother's severe emotional distress, humiliation, and resulting physical decline caused by my false and inflammatory statements to her neighbors and church community. Then came the demand. They were demanding an immediate public apology, a full retraction of all my statements, and compensatory damages in the amount of $110,000. I read the number, $110,000. It was a fascinating calculation. It was my $96,000, plus a $14,000 premium for my disloyalty. I felt nothing. It was just more data. My mother had failed to get her money through guilt, so she was escalating to a legal threat. It was the same transaction, just with a different processing fee. I closed the PDF and called Meredith. He is a high-conflict lawyer, I said, skipping the pleasantries. $110,000. I heard what sounded distinctly like Meredith stifling a laugh. It was a dry, sharp sound, like paper tearing. Sabrina, she said, this is not a lawsuit. This is a tantrum with a letterhead. They are bluffing. They are trying to scare you back into the box. They are trying to recast her as the victim before the district attorney's office finishes reviewing the real case. It is a weak, sloppy, emotional move. So what do we do? We do not defend, Meredith said, and I could hear the smile in her voice now. We attack, and we do it professionally. They sent a demand based on feelings. We are going to send a counterclaim based on math, and your math is much, much better than theirs. Meredith's official response, which she drafted and sent to me for approval an hour later, was surgical. It was not a letter. It was a weapon. It was a formal counterclaim. We flatly rejected their demands, and then we listed our own. First, we were countersuing for the full restitution of all $96,000 I had paid over the 48-month period, under the clear legal theory of payment by fraudulent misrepresentation. Second, we were adding a claim for damages related to severe emotional distress and financial abuse, citing the long-term systematic extraction of funds, including the $38,000 surplus that was not applied to the mortgage. Third, we were adding a claim for harassment and tortious interference, citing Rachel Porter's documented, witnessed, and video-recorded behavior at my place of business, an event that caused significant reputational risk and required the implementation of a restraining order. Meredith was meticulous. She attached, as exhibits, every piece of data I had gathered. Exhibit A, the full, itemized spreadsheet of all 48 payments. Exhibit B, the transcript of the cash cow video. Exhibit C, the official statement from the mortgage company, showing the actual amount due versus the amount I paid, highlighting the $38,000 surplus. Exhibit D, the audio files of Rachel's threatening voicemails. Exhibit E, the formal incident report from Pike and Alder Freight Systems, co-signed by the head of security. Exhibit F, a copy of the active restraining order against Rachel Porter. She concluded the letter by stating that any further attempts to contact me would be seen as witness intimidation, given the pending fraud investigation by the Riverton Community Church, a case we were fully cooperating with. We sent the counterclaim. By doing so, the entire dynamic shifted. My mother was no longer the poor weeping widow of her lawyer's letter. She was now the primary defendant in a high-stakes, multi-claim lawsuit, facing a mountain of evidence that was not emotional, but factual, documented, and time-stamped. She was the one with significant financial risk. She was the one who had been caught. While her lawyer's office processed that grenade, the other flank advanced. Marlene Coates called me. Her voice was grim. Sabrina, The church council has concluded its emergency meeting, she said. We have voted unanimously. We are formally requesting that the district attorney's office pursue criminal charges for fraud. We have turned over all of our records, and we have included your PDF as supporting evidence of a long-term pattern. This is an official criminal matter now. I thanked her. I hung up. The stakes just kept rising. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I did not recognize. But I recognized the language. The restraining order stopped Rachel from calling or approaching me, but it did not stop her from getting a cheap burner phone. The text was long, rambling, and smelled of late-night desperation. Are you happy now? Are you? They are trying to make Mom a criminal. The DA, you did this. You are trying to put your own mother in jail just to prove you are right? What is wrong with you? Who is going to take care of her if she is on probation? Who will manage her medicine? Me? You think I can do that? You have destroyed everything, just to be the perfect little victim. I hope you are happy. I stared at the text. This was the first communication I had received from her since the restraining order. It was the first time her rage had been replaced with the whine of true, pathetic panic. They were cornered. For the first time in days, I replied. My thumbs were steady. You are asking the wrong person. Rachel, you should ask Mom why she applied for an old age emergency fund while I was sending her $2,000 every month. You should ask Mom why she called me a walking wallet. You should ask Mom why you were invited to a prime rib dinner. And I was not. The reply did not come. The silence from that burner phone was different. It was not the silence of rage. It was the silence of suffocation. It was the sound of someone who had been confronted with a set of facts they could not spin, threaten, or cry their way out of. 1 week passed, an eternity of silence. Meredith called me on a Tuesday afternoon. They blinked, she said. What? Michael Evans, your mother's lawyer. He called me this morning. They are panicking. The DA's office has apparently contacted them. They want to make a deal. What deal? I asked. They are offering a full and total walkaway, Meredith said. They will drop their $110,000 lawsuit. They will drop the defamation claim. They will drop all demands for an apology, public or private. They will sign anything, as long as it makes this go away. In exchange for what? I knew there was a catch. In exchange, Meredith said, you drop your counterclaim for the $96,000. I was silent. This was the moment, the money, the literal price of my pain, my sacrifice, my stupidity. $96,000. I could get it back. Meredith, I said slowly, can we win? Can we get that money? Yes, she said, without hesitation. Sabrina, your evidence is an ironclad case of fraud. We can take them to civil court, and we will win. We will almost certainly get a judgment for the full $96,000, plus court costs. I have no doubt. She paused. But I need you to understand what that means. A judgment is not cash. They will fight it. It will be a year, maybe 2. It will mean depositions, where they will say horrible things about you. It will mean court dates, where you will have to sit in a room with her. It will be long, it will be ugly, and it will be expensive, emotionally and financially. It will keep you in this vortex, chained to them, for the foreseeable future. She let that sink in. So, you have a choice, she said. Do you want to win, or do you want to be free? I sat at my desk at Pike and Alder. I looked at the spreadsheets on my screen. I thought about the $96,000. It was a staggering amount of money. It was my future. But then I thought about 2 more years of this. 2 more years of my mother's lies, of Rachel's rage, of lawyers, and stress, and having to relive that video, that phone call, that lobby confrontation. What was the price of my peace? I realized that winning meant getting my money back, but being free meant getting me back. I choose free, I said. I choose out, not for her, for me. Good, Meredith said, and I heard the genuine approval in her voice. That is the right call, the smart call. It is the best money you will never get back. I will send them the acceptance. We will have the mutual agreement signed by the end of the day. And just like that, it was over. In the eyes of the law, the financial war between me and my mother had ended in a draw. I had severed the line. I was no longer her fixed income, but the story was not finished, because there was one variable that neither my mother's lawyer nor mine controlled. The house, I had stopped paying. The church was not paying. My mother could not pay, and the bank, which does not care about emotional trauma, or family dinners, or who was a cash cow, only cares about its own fixed income. The official foreclosure process began, and that is when every last pretense of emotional attachment turned to smoke. When the bank's notice of foreclosure was officially posted, it was not a quiet letter. It was a large, brightly colored sticker slapped onto the front door, a public badge of failure. The neighbors, the same ones who had received my PDF, began to whisper, but the whispers had changed. My mother was no longer poor Janet, the devoted widow betrayed by her ungrateful, cold-hearted daughter. The narrative had been corrected. She was now that woman, the one who had lied to the church, the one who had been taking money from her own daughter in the emergency fund. The foreclosure notice was not a tragedy. It was a confirmation. It was the public consequence of a private fraud. I did not go to the house. I did not drive by to see the sticker. I had no interest in visiting the scene. I was at my desk at Pike and Alder, reconciling fuel cost discrepancies for our Midwest fleet. I was detached. I had chosen to be free, and freedom meant I did not have to watch the building burn. I received my updates from the only person in the family who had not been either a primary antagonist or a complete coward, Uncle Alan. His position was compromised, but he was the only one who seemed to be processing the events with a shred of shame. He was the one who had sent the video, and I sensed his calls were his penance. He was the only one I did not hang up on. She is not doing well. Sabrina, he told me over the phone one evening. His voice was low, gravelly with discomfort. She is drinking all day. She just sits in the living room with the blinds closed. She told me you were a traitor to the family, that you had destroyed her. I did not destroy her, Uncle Alan, I said, my voice flat. I just stopped enabling her. I know, he sighed. I know. I thought you should know. The day the house was sold at auction, I felt nothing. It was just a transaction, a debt being settled. The final report from Uncle Alan came a week later. My mother was not, as she had always screamed she would be. Out on the street, she was not destitute or homeless. The house had equity. After the remaining mortgage and the legal fees were paid, there was a surplus. It was not a fortune, but it was a sum. She was not left with zero. She took that money, and she bought a place, a small, derelict house on the far edge of Riverside County, in an unincorporated area that smelled like dust and diesel fumes. It was right up against the highway. It is a rough place, Sabrina, Alan described, his voice pained. The front door is hanging off one hinge. The roof looks like it's about to cave in. I went inside, just to make sure she was settled. The whole place smells like cheap vodka and cat litter, but she does not even own a cat. I pictured it, the noise from the trucks, the peeling linoleum, the permanent grime. It was the physical manifestation of the surplus she had skimmed from me and the church. The $38,000 had not bought her a life of luxury. It had bought her this, a final, rotting monument to her own choices. I listened, and when he was finished, I just said, "Okay," and I did not ask any more questions. The other dominoes fell in quick, legal succession. The church council, satisfied that their complaint had been formalized, did not back down. The district attorney's office, seeing a clear case of fraud against a nonprofit, acted. My mother was not given jail time. She was a first-time offender, and she was, in fact, an elderly woman, but she was not vindicated. She was given 2 years of probation and a court-ordered repayment plan. She had to return every dollar she had taken from the relief fund. It was public. It was on the record. Her narrative of the victim was legally, permanently, and officially dead. And Rachel? My sister, the devoted daughter, the one who lived 20 minutes away, The one who was supposed to take care of Mom? She evaporated. Her social media accounts, once full of filtered photos and parties, turned into a strange, vague string of posts about toxic family and being poisoned from the inside. But she stopped visiting my mother. The moment the prime rib dinners stopped, the moment the emergency loans for her car payment dried up, the moment my mother was no longer a resource but a legal and financial liability, Rachel was gone. She was the enforcer for a system that had gone bankrupt. For the first time in her entire life, my mother had no one to call. She had no daughter to activate with guilt. She had no sister-in-law to lie to. She had no church council to deceive. She had no one to scream at, no one to cry to, no one to demand, "Rescue me right now." And I was no longer on standby. About a month later, on a Tuesday afternoon, I stopped at a discount grocery store near a gas station on my way home, just to pick up a gallon of milk. It was a bleak place, with flickering fluorescent lights and a floor sticky with spilled soda. I was in the canned goods aisle, looking for tuna, when I heard a cart with a squeaky wheel. I looked up. It was her. She was skeletal. Her skin was a pale, grayish yellow. Her hair was thin and matted to her scalp. She was wearing a stained fleece bathrobe and slippers. She was pushing a cart that contained only 3 items: a large plastic bottle of the cheapest vodka, a 6-pack of instant noodle cups, and a can of aerosol air freshener. She did not see me at first. She was staring at the shelf of canned soup, her hand trembling as she reached for one. Then her eyes moved, and she saw me. I was standing there, in my work suit, holding a basket with milk and vegetables. Her eyes met mine. There was no recognition. There was no, "Oh, my daughter." There was no sadness. There was no anger. She looked at me. For one long, cold second, the way she would look at a bank teller who had just denied her loan, she looked at me like I was a functionary, a piece of administrative machinery that had failed to do its job. Her mouth opened. A small, dry sound came out. Then she closed it. She turned, leaving her cart, with the vodka and the noodles, in the middle of the aisle. She walked, as quickly as she could in her slippers, past the checkout lines and out the automatic doors, disappearing into the glare of the setting sun. I stood there, alone in the aisle. The squeaky wheel of her abandoned cart slowly spun to a stop. I waited. I waited for the old programming to kick in. I waited for the crushing, automatic wave of guilt. I waited for the internal voice that would scream, "You did this. Go after her. Fix it. She is your mother." I waited. It did not come. I just felt a deep, profound, and bottomless pity. And then, nothing. I picked up my can of tuna, put it in my basket, and walked to the checkout. That evening, I told Ethan what had happened. Ethan and I had been dating for 4 months. He was a systems engineer for a medical device company here in Riverton. He was quiet, logical, and had the most calming presence of any human I had ever met. He had a habit, when I spoke, of listening until I was completely, fully finished, without ever interrupting. He had been with me through the final, ugliest parts of this, and he had never once told me what I should do. He just listened. I told him about the discount store, the vodka, the look in her eyes, the abandoned cart. He was quiet for a long time, just watching me. Then he asked the one question no one else had ever thought to ask. It was gentle. "Do you want to help her?" he asked. Not because she deserves it, not because it is the right thing to do, but because, would you sleep better tonight if you did? I looked at this man, who was offering me a choice based on my own peace, not my own obligation. I considered his question. I searched inside myself, looking for that old, familiar spark of guilt, that desperate need to be the savior. It was gone. "No," I said. My voice was clear. "No, I do not." He nodded. Once, no judgment, no follow-up questions. He just reached out and put his hand on my knee. A simple, warm, grounding gesture. That silent, solid touch was heavier, more real, and meant more to me than all the conditional, hysterical, weaponized "I love yous" I had begged my mother for my entire life. I understood the most important thing. I no longer needed my mother, or Rachel, or anyone from that life to validate me. I did not need her permission to exist, to be worthy of love. I had finally found that evidence somewhere else. I had found it in myself, in the files I had built, in the truth I had finally spoken. I had found it in this man, who sat next to me, who wanted nothing from me but my company, who was not demanding a monthly income. That night, for the first time in my adult life, I double-locked the door to my own apartment. I did not feel indebted. I did not feel guilty. I just felt safe. And the next morning, I woke up with a single, clear thought. I am done. But the story with the rest of the family, that is not. The week after I saw my mother in the grocery store was the quietest of my life. The legal agreements were signed. The restraining order was in effect. The foreclosure was complete. The criminal case was settled. Every thread that had bound me to them, financial, legal, and physical, had been severed. The roaring, chaotic engine of their demands had finally, blessedly, gone silent. I was just Sabrina. I was an analyst at Pike & Alder. I was the woman who was learning to cook meals that were not optimized for cost per calorie. I was Ethan's girlfriend. This new life was tentative, like a structure built on ground that had been shaking for 30 years, but it was standing. Then, a new message arrived. It was not a text. It was a message request on a social media platform I rarely used, from a name I had not seen in a decade. Jenna Blake. Jenna and I had been in the same honors classes in high school. We were not close friends, but we were friendly acquaintances, united by a shared desire to get out of Riverton. I had heard she had become a journalist. Her message was short and professional. "Hi, Sabrina. This is Jenna Blake, from Riverton High. I'm a reporter with Channel 8 News now. I've been following a story that started at the community church. It involves their emergency relief fund and a formal fraud complaint. Your mother's name, and yours, have come up. I think there is a much bigger story here than simple accounting fraud, and I believe you are at the center of it. I would like to tell your side of it, if you will let me." My first instinct was to delete the message. My job, my entire personality, was built on compliance, on keeping things internal, on handling discrepancies quietly and locking down the data. My mother's voice, the one she had programmed into me, screamed, "You do not air dirty laundry. You are embarrassing the family. What will people think?" But then I thought of the lobby at Pike & Alder. I thought of Rachel screaming, "She did not leave you at the hospital." They had already aired the dirty laundry. They had done it publicly, loudly, and maliciously, in my place of business. They had chosen the public square as their battlefield. The only difference was that for 30 years, only their side of the story had ever been told. I thought of the neighbors who had judged me. I thought of the relatives who had called me cold. I thought of the silence I had kept, the silence that had cost me $96,000 and my sense of self. This was not revenge. This was a correction of the public record. This was the final audit. I messaged her back. "I will meet you, but I have conditions." We met at a sterile, anonymous coffee shop downtown, halfway between my office and her news station. Jenna was exactly as I remembered her. Sharp, focused, and no nonsense. "I am not here to do a daytime TV sob story. Sabrina," she said before I had even sat down, "I am not going to exploit your family trauma for ratings. I am a data journalist. I followed the money. I see a woman who defrauded a church charity, and I hear credible rumors that same woman was being financially supported by her daughter the entire time. That is the story. Is it true?" "It is," I said. "And I have the data. I have the bank statements. I have the spreadsheets. I have the audio files. And I have the video." I set my terms. "You can tell the story, but you tell the whole story. No cheap, sentimental drama. You use the numbers. You use my spreadsheets. You broadcast the exact amount I paid, the amount of the mortgage, and the surplus my mother pocketed. You quote the church's findings, and you must use the audio from the dinner." Jenna raised an eyebrow. "The video?" "The video," I said. The cash cow video. I do not want this to be my word against hers. I want Riverton to hear what she said, in her own voice. I pulled out my phone. I played the 30-second clip for her. Jenna, a woman who I was sure had heard everything in her line of work, went visibly pale. She listened to Walking Wallet and Fixed Income. She looked up from the phone. Her professional mask hardened into steel. "My God," she said, quiet and sharp. "Okay, Sabrina, no cheap drama, just the facts. This is exactly what we will do. The facts are more than enough." I did not watch the broadcast live. Ethan came over to my apartment. He made pasta. We sat on the sofa. I could not eat. I just waited, my stomach in a cold knot. My mother had always threatened me with public shame. Now, I had willingly invited it to my front door. At 6:45 p.m., my phone buzzed. A link from Jenna. "It is done. Here's the segment." I took a breath. "Okay," I said to Ethan. "Let's see." I clicked the link. Jenna Blake appeared on my laptop screen, standing in front of the Riverton Community Church. She was professional, somber, and precise. "A story of family, finance, and betrayal in our community tonight," she began. For 4 consecutive years, Riverton analyst Sabrina Porter paid $2,000 every month to her mother, Janet Porter, in a good faith effort to save her childhood home from foreclosure. A graphic appeared on the screen. A simple, bold-faced line. "Total paid by daughter, $96,000. Jenna continued. But a Channel 8 investigation has found that the home's actual mortgage payment was only $1,200. And bank records show that during this same 4-year period, Janet Porter was also collecting thousands of dollars from the community church's emergency relief fund after telling the council she was abandoned and destitute." The segment cut to Marlene Coates. Her face was grim. "This fund is for the most vulnerable. It is for heating bills. It is for prescriptions. It is for people who have truly, desperately, got no one else. It is not for a lifestyle." The screen cut back to Jenna. "A lifestyle that allegedly included expensive dinners, paid for while claiming poverty." This came to light after a video, recorded by a family member, was sent to Sabrina Porter by mistake. And then, I heard it, my own mother's voice, clear as a bell, playing over a blurred, generic image of a dinner table. "At least she can be the cash cow for the family." Then Rachel's voice. "She just acts like she's the savior." And my mother's, closing the segment. "Don't act like she's a hero. She's just my fixed income, okay?" The segment ended with Jenna outside the county courthouse. The district attorney's office has confirmed that Janet Porter has entered a plea agreement for misdemeanor fraud. She has been sentenced to 2 years of probation and has been ordered to pay full restitution to the church. We reached out to both Janet and Rachel Porter for a comment. They have not responded. The video ended. I just sat there, staring at the black screen. Ethan said nothing, just put his hand on my shoulder. And then my phone, which had been silent for weeks, began to buzz and buzz and buzz. It was not my mother. It was not Rachel. It was everyone else. The comments on the news station's social media page were not what my mother had always promised. They were not, "What a horrible, ungrateful daughter." They were, "I cannot believe that woman, lying to her daughter and the church. Fixed income? Cash cow? That is monstrous. She was eating prime rib with charity money while her daughter cut back on her own life. That is pure evil. I hope they make her pay back every single cent. The daughter, too." Then came the texts. Distant relatives, old family friends, the flying monkeys, who had been my mother's devoted audience. "Sabrina, I just saw the news on Channel 8. I had no idea that was going on. I am so sorry. Sabrina, please forgive me. Your mother told us such a different story. We judged you. We were wrong. I cannot believe what I just heard. What she called you. I am just speechless. You are a better woman than I am." I read every single message. I saw the apologies. I saw the shock. I saw the truth finally land. and I did not reply to a single one. My job was not to absolve them. My job was not to educate these grown adults on how to be decent, or how to see a lie that was right in front of them. My job was done. The report was public. The most satisfying consequence was the quietist, the church council, now armed with a public mandate and a legal judgment, became a force of nature. This was no longer a quiet request for repayment. This was a formal, non-negotiable, court-enforced debt. My mother, the woman who had lived her entire life as a professional victim, the woman who had mastered the art of the tearful performance, had to sit in a beige room and sign legal documents. She had to sign her name to a paper that said, "Yes, I received these funds based on false information. Yes, I will pay them back." There was no audience. There was no applause. There was no Rachel beside her, raising a glass and calling her a survivor. There was just a probation officer and a dotted line. I thought I would feel ecstatic. I thought I would feel a hot rush of victory, of "I told you so," but I did not. I sat on my sofa, and I felt peace. For the first time in my life, the truth was not a toxic, heavy secret that I was forced to carry alone in my gut. It was not a poison I had to swallow every day. It was just out. It was in the air. It was a public record, a filed document, a news report. It belonged to the world now, and the world, looking at the data, looking at the facts, had come to the same conclusion I had. "No," the world said. "This is not right." I realized something else, something much bigger. This whole agonizing process had given me the one thing I had been denied my entire childhood: witnesses. My whole life had been, Mom said, I said, my word against hers, and in that battle, I had always lost. I was too sensitive. I was overreacting. I was ungrateful. I was lying. It was not that way anymore. It was not my word against hers. It was my word. Plus the video, plus the bank statements, plus the mortgage company's testimony, plus the church council's evidence, plus the news report, plus the court filing. It was my truth, backed by an army of verifiable data. I was sitting on the sofa, thinking about this, when I started to cry. It was not a sad cry. It was not an angry cry. It was a strange, shuddering, overwhelming release. Ethan, startled, put his arm around me. "Sabrina? What is it? What is wrong?" I wiped my face, and I think I was laughing at the same time. "Nothing is wrong," I whispered. It was hard to get the words out. "It is just..." They believe me. For the first time in my entire life, I told my story, and people believe me. The feeling was so unfamiliar, it was disorienting. It was like breathing a new kind of air. He held me, and I let him. I leaned against him, and I felt the simple, solid reality of his presence. This was not a transaction. This was not a debt that I would be paying interest on for the rest of my life. It was just support, freely given, somewhere across town, on the edge of Riverside County, by the highway. I knew my mother was in her rotting house, telling a different story to anyone who would listen, but this time, her story was hitting a wall of evidence. I was not the girl who cowered. I was not the girl who opened her wallet every time the phone rang. I was the analyst. I was the one who had finally, successfully, balanced the books. I was the one who now decided who was allowed into my life, and on what terms. My life was finally quiet. And then, one night, my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered. "Hello?" "Sabrina." The voice was hesitant, wrecked. It is Uncle Alan." I was silent. "Sabrina," he rushed on. You need to come to your grandfather's old storage shed, tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. "Why?" I asked, my voice cold. The core family is going to be there. Your mother, Rachel, your aunt, me. They said they want to resolve things. They said they want to have closure, to settle everything, once and for all. My first instinct, my professional, legal, Meredith Cole instinct, was to say no, to hang up, but I thought about it. Closure. I knew what that word meant to them. It meant one last, desperate attempt to drag me into a room and ambush me with guilt. It meant one final performance where they would demand that I apologize for their shame, that I fix the mess I had exposed. They wanted closure, and I realized, so did I. I will be there, I said. I did not agree because I wanted to reconcile. I did not agree because I wanted my family back. I agreed because I wanted to end it.